guys, welcome to another episode of the Design Your Success podcast, the podcast where human design and business meet. And today I have again a very special guest, and I'm really excited that you're here. Welcome, Nina Koo.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so lovely to have you, and I'm really excited because we worked together on your human design and we had a great session, and I'm really excited we get to talk about it a lot more and of course more about your business too. So before we dive into that, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
So I'm Nina Koo. I'm a sensitive leadership coach. So I specialize in supporting and nurturing highly sensitive female leaders. And my dream is for sensitive women to rule the world.
Oh, I love that. I love that. The world would be such a better place if sensitive women would rule the world.
Oh, wouldn't it be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a bit about how you became an entrepreneur. I'm always curious to hear, how did you get to be an entrepreneur? How did you start your business?
So much like everything in my life, I seem to fall into things. So I fell into the corporate world. I fell out of the corporate world. So really, it's quite an interesting story. So I actually ran shrieking from the corporate world about 20 years ago. I didn't know I was highly sensitive at the time. And I had to go around the world for a year to recover. So I spent a lot of time on various beautiful beaches because that's my happy place. Being by the sea, I learned how to dive. It was wonderful. And I think I really needed to do that for my healing. And then when I came back to reality after a year, I didn't want to stay in London. I lived in London at the time. So I chose to go and live in France for a bit. And I met the man who is soon to become my husband. But meanwhile, I was thinking, well, what do I do now? So I've been around the world, I've healed, and I was ready for something different. So I studied neurolinguistic programming. And, that was for me personally. And then I thought, my goodness, this stuff really works. It works so well. Why don't I do this to help others? And so that's kind of how I fell into coaching. So it was through, finding something that really worked for me and then wanting to share it with others. And in a very similar way, when I discovered I was highly sensitive about 6-7 years ago, for me, it was such a revelation, and it made such a huge difference to me that I thought, oh my goodness, I need to share this with others. So I kind of fell into it again. So I fall into, all the major things in my life. So now, yes, because it made such a huge difference to me, knowing that I was highly sensitive. And I, did the typical thing, researched everything, went on all the courses I could, read all the books I could, and then created sort of basically coaching programs and coach women sharing all the things that work for me so that hopefully it will work for them as well.
Oh my goodness, I've got so many questions after listening to you. But let's start with I think, a very important question. How did you find out you were highly sensitive?
Now that's quite a funny story. So I have 2 daughters, and we were really struggling with my oldest daughter. She must have been about 7 at the time. And we lived in this road, and her school was literally 2 minutes, or not even 2 minutes down the road. It was like literally at the end of our road. But some mornings I really struggled to get her to school on time. And it was ridiculous because, you'd think, how can I be late for school when we live just up the road from school? But it would be, that she'd be in her uniform and then suddenly she'd be having a tantrum, writhing on her bedroom floor, ripping her school uniform off, crying and screaming. And what I realized eventually, after weeks of this happening and thinking, oh my God, I'm the worst parent in the world. I can't even get my daughter to school on time. Is there something wrong with my daughter? Is she a monster? I realized one day after I'd finally got her to school, I turned up on my friend's doorstep, and my friend literally lives across the road from the school. And I just burst into tears because it was just so intense. And she handed me Dr. Elaine Aron's book on the highly sensitive child. And she said, I think you need to read this. So I read the book and I started reading, and I thought, oh my God, thank goodness my daughter is just highly sensitive. She's in overwhelm. And she was reacting to things like the scratchy labels in her uniform, the seams in her socks. And the interesting thing was she wasn't doing this all the time. It was just if she hadn't slept well, or maybe there was something going on at school. Yes, I can see you can relate to that. So it was when she was in overwhelm that she was being like this. And then I read more and I thought, oh my God, but that's me as well. I'm highly sensitive too. And it was like I finally found the missing jigsaw piece puzzle to my life, or like the right user manual for me. And it made such a huge difference. All the light bulbs went off, and I'm like, oh my goodness, so that's why I was like that at school. That's why I struggled at work. That's why this happened. And everything just fell into place for me. And so that's how I found out I was highly sensitive. It was because we were struggling to get my daughter to school on time.
I can so relate to this story. I mean, the scratchy labels and, all the triggers that you get, and that you get so, I would say, challenged by everything that's going on around you. I can highly relate to that. The scratchy labels. And it's not always. And so I love this story. And of course, it's sad that you find out the hard way. But I can imagine the relief that you feel like, there's nothing wrong.
Yes.
It's just between air quotes that she is highly sensitive. And by the way, so am I.
Yes. And I'm so glad that I finally found out, because it was so amazing, because I have studied psychology, but I'd never come across the highly sensitive trait. And then I studied NLP and I did years and years and years of personal development work, but I'd never come across it. And I couldn't believe I'd got to I was in my 40s before I discovered, but I was so grateful. And I'm so grateful that I know, because both my daughters are actually highly sensitive, but in very different ways. Yeah. And so, I think it's really amazing. And then when I think back to my parents, I think, gosh, I think they were highly sensitive as well, which really explains a lot of things. And so I'm just grateful that I know now.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think when people are listening to this podcast, and they can relate to the scratchy labels and being triggered, and when they hear this, I think it's so important that people know this about themselves, because all those years, at least I thought all those years, something's wrong with me. I'm overly sensitive, and I shouldn't be such a pussy. I just need to power through, and just come on, don't make a fuss. But now I know I am this sensitive.
Absolutely. And I think because we are sensitive, we sense that we're different from others. And because sadly our Western world doesn't seem to value sensitivity, we do get told the whole time, stop being oversensitive. Why are you still thinking about that? Let it go. It happened 2 weeks ago. And we don't know to say, I'm wired that way. I'm wired to still be thinking about it. I'm wired to be exquisitely sensitive. I'm not oversensitive. I'm just super sensitive.
Exactly.
And I think it's, once we know that we're wired differently, because we're here for a reason, we're wired this way for a reason, that's when we can really step into the gifts of our sensitivity.
Yes, absolutely. And it relates so much to your human design when we spoke about that. So you are a 2-4 emotional generator, and the profile line 2 has this incredible talent, and she's not aware of it. And it's like, oh no, but this is a normal thing. And it so relates to your story of like discovering your highly sensitive talent in your 40s. Well, all the time you had it already.
Yes, and I loved finding out my human design and talking to you about it, Nicoline, because this thing you were saying, that you have this talent, but you assume it's normal. So this describes me to a T in my work life. I used to sit in boardroom meetings, and I worked on projects, and I'd be sitting there listening to everybody give their project updates. And of course, you always have a deadline for projects. And I'd be sitting there thinking, how can they think that we're going to deliver this project by the deadline? Can't they see, that this and this and this means there's no way that's going to happen? And I think, I'd question myself, am I crazy? Because nobody else would call it out. So of course I was not confident enough at the time to, to speak up about it. So I just sit there thinking there was something wrong with me and I must be wrong. And then when actually the project, of course, didn't reach the deadline, I'll be sitting there going, why didn't I say something about that? So yes, we assume that everybody else can do what we can.
Yeah.
And actually not everybody can see the things that we see.
Exactly. And it's also thanks to your sensitivity that you pick up on very subtle signals that people send out, that people broadcast, that you pick up on, and I pick up on them too. But not everyone can do this. And people are like, yeah, but he said this. And then you're like, yeah, he said it with words, but the whole message was very different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is a very special gift to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when you started your own business and you kind of fell into it, and it's so funny because when I talk to people on this podcast, practically everyone happened to start a business at some point. So there's no such thing as coincidence, I think. So when you started it, I really would love to hear about the hurdles that you overcame in your entrepreneurial journey.
Wow, gosh. So I think for me, my work as a coach and my own personal development journey have been inextricably linked. So I'd say some of the major hurdles for me, which probably is very true for most highly sensitive people, especially women in our culture, is we have this innate need. We're wired to keep ourselves and the rest of our species safe. So we want to hide because that's the safest thing. And of course, when you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business, you can't hide, because if you hide, you don't have any clients and you don't make any money. And so putting myself out there, being visible, being confident, overcoming all the limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough, who am I to do this? The imposter syndrome. It's like I am comparing yourself to others that highly sensitive people are so good at doing, judging, ranking, all that sort of stuff. It's really having to overcome all of that in myself so that I can really stand there and say, no, I am a good coach. I do know what I'm talking about. I am comfortable being visible because really I need to be. And so it was very interesting, my whole journey, even from discovering that I was highly sensitive, because I've been coaching for about 20 years now, on and off, with a few breaks while I had my children, but in all about 20 years. And I'm then specializing in coaching highly sensitive women, highly sensitive people first, when I discovered I was highly sensitive, and then deciding, okay, no, I'm going to now work with highly sensitive women. And now I'm working with highly sensitive women, helping them step into leadership roles, or if they're already there, supporting them in leadership roles, because that's very much mirrored my own journey, and realizing that actually our sensitive trait is our greatest leadership asset. And I believe that, we have to get over this fear of being visible and vulnerable, because the world really needs us to speak up about the small things that we see that other people don't seem to see, about our ability to see the big picture, our amazing empathy, our ability to think deeply. So it's really having to let go of this fear of my own fears of public speaking and speaking up, so that I can actually share this and encourage other highly sensitive women that the world really needs us to use our voices.
Yeah, absolutely. I so agree with you that we definitely need to do that. It's like a must. There is no other way around it. And I love the links that you show here with your human design. So you're a 2-4 generator, and you have an open throat and an open heart center. And when you have an open heart center, it's always difficult to deal with other people's opinions. You can be sensitive to other people's opinions. So the comparison thing can be big for people with an open heart center. And the 2, like you said, is, the hermit who wants to hide, who wants to be in our own little bubble. Like, it's comfortable, it's cozy. But as an entrepreneur, like you said, you need to get out there. You need to be seen and heard. And therefore, it could feel difficult, especially if your throat is undefined, like mine, that you need something to respond to in order to speak up. Like, this is the exact reason why I do the podcast interviews. So I ask questions and I can respond to what people are telling me. And this is the best way for me, because I'm a generator, I have an open throat. So it's the best way for me to connect with people and to get my message out there. Another thing that you said about the very beginning, that you went around the world and you basically did the reflection, the healing bit. That's so related to the 2 as well, and to the 4 as well, because the 4 has the introvert and the extrovert impersonated in him or herself. And when you have that combined, the 2 and the 4, it's like very comfortable to be in your own little bubble and to hide. So good for you for not doing that and stepping up and speaking up and being heard.
Well, I'd say it's taken a lot of work
Yeah.
to be able to get here to this place. But, and it's interesting you were saying that we need to respond. And I think actually the world is giving us a lot of things to respond to. Yes. And I think, it's the biggest invitation in a way to respond by noticing what's not working in the world, and I'm passionate about showing highly sensitive women that we are wired to make change. We are wired to be leaders. But also, I think, I like working with women because I am a woman. It's what I know best, even though you equally have equal numbers of highly sensitive men and women. Yeah. But I think women also have this innate desire to make the world a better place for our children and the generations to come. It's almost like we have this responsibility to safeguard the beauty and the wonderfulness in our world. I'm sure many men have that too, but I don't know if it's as innate in them as it is for women.
I think many men do have the sensitivity, but they are conditioned. And of course, it depends where you grow up and how you grow up. But many men get conditioned with, oh, but you're a man, you need to toughen up, you don't need to show your emotions, you cannot cry, you cannot be emotional, or, whatever. Guys are taught to be tough. Yeah. And when you're a sensitive person as a man, I think you're struggling even more than women are. Because for a woman being sensitive, I'm not saying that it's accepted, but it's more accepted than for men being sensitive. And when you look at, for instance, the suicide numbers, it's crazy how men are struggling, and the only way they see is to end their life. And when I think about that, and I'm like, oh, if only these men were aware of their incredible talent to be sensitive and to feel and to feel what's going on and to deal with it in a proper way. So I think your work is incredibly needed for women and for men as well.
I think you're so right. And of course, being sensitive ourselves, we all really feel, it is very hard for sensitive men, especially. I think you're absolutely right with that. And it's almost giving people the permission to be sensitive, and to be told it's okay. And actually, it's a beautiful thing. And one of the things I'd love to share with you is the researchers who did the work on sensitivity as a spectrum. And there's the dandelion, tulip, and orchid metaphor, and how orchids are the highly sensitive portion of the population. We need specific conditions and environments, but if we get those specific conditions, we can bloom and thrive over and over again. But up the other end of the spectrum, the non-sensitives, the dandelions, they can grow anywhere. They will grow in cracks in pavements. You can put weed killer on them and they'll still pop up. And then in the middle, you have the tulips, who are neither as robust as the dandelions, but not as delicate and in need of specific conditions as the orchids. But when I look at sensitivity as a spectrum, I think thank goodness I'm an orchid. I love being an orchid. I love being super sensitive. I
Yeah.
don't really want to be a dandelion, although I know our world does need dandelions, but I'm happy being an orchid.
Yes, absolutely. It's like being a lighthouse, right? Being a lighthouse for people, saying, broadcasting the message of it's okay to be sensitive, and actually it's a great talent to have, and here's how you use it.
Mhm.
I think that's incredibly needed. And in that sense, I think it links so beautifully with human design, because when we look at people's body graphs and we can see how many centers are open, undefined, that describes their sensitivity
Mhm.
already. And I can totally see when I get a person's body graph, I can totally see, like, okay, you're a very sensitive person. And when they get that validation, it's like, oh, I'm not crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. This is how I'm wired. Like you said about the sensitivity, this is how you're wired. This is how you operate. You are meant to think about a lot of things. You are meant to feel a lot of things. And it's a talent. It's a talent. There's nothing wrong. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing is broken.
Mhm.
It's all good.
Yes, and I love that. I think, and I love what you say about the human design because I think it is so validating. It's like somebody handing you your blueprint and going, look, this is you,
Yeah.
and this is how you can operate in the world as you. Don't try and do things the way we're taught to do things by everybody else or society or what the latest trend is. It's like, no, that doesn't work for you.
Mm.
If you do try and do things like that, you're going to end up burnt out or exhausted. So do things in a way that works for you, which is why I love the work you do with human design. And especially when you helped me with my profile, it was so clear to me. It's like, oh my goodness, I can just let that bit go. I
Yeah.
don't need to do that. When I instinctively feel, no, I don't want to do that. It's like, it's so validating to be shown, actually, no, don't do that because it wouldn't work for you anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love how the human design explains us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Could you give me an example of what it is that you could let go of, that you can stop doing because it's not for you?
Well, yes, I remember very clearly. It's like you were saying, don't cold selling and selling to crowds, like selling from the stage, just would not work for me. So
Mhm.
I need to know people to nurture relationships with them. Maybe have a network of people who know, like, and trust me. I have to have a relationship with people before I would invite them to work with me. But selling cold from a stage really is not in my profile. And I think, oh my goodness, that's so nice to be able to let go of that need because you hear, don't you, that, it's like you should be able to give an amazing speech and then you'll have people flocking to want to work with
Yeah.
you. And that's never happened for me. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with me that I can't sell like that? So to be told, actually, don't even try doing that because it's not going to work. It's like, oh, wonderful. It's like a huge weight has been lifted from my shoulders.
Yeah, it's a relief, right? When you hear you can just stop doing things the way it's not meant for you to do. So just don't do it. Don't go there.
Yes, absolutely. It's like pushing water uphill, It's like, yeah, don't, why would you do that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing with human design. And of course, there are so many layers in our human design. There are so many other things that we could just get out of your design. But I think these eye openers are already so valuable. And it's always a journey of a lifetime. Whenever you start with your human design, it's a journey of a lifetime and you get to grow into it. And then you're like, oh, but this is also, okay, and here and there. And I've been working with it now for 5 years and I'm still learning every single day. And I
Mhm.
love that because I have a one in my profile, which is all about knowledge, information. And I love to dig deep and really get into information and knowledge and to be like a walking library. I love doing that and being that. So that's going to be in with me for the rest of my life. But I'm still learning. And there's so many layers in our human design. So you're in for a treat. So much more to discover.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, So when we look at your journey so far, and we think of, especially as entrepreneurs, of success, what would you say is your definition or your criteria for success?
That's a really good question. Being sensitive, I have to feel into this now. It's
Yeah,
like,
that's
what
fine.
what does success feel like for me? So, of course, you have the very traditional, quite materialistic definitions of success, making a good income.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I've been reading a very good book recently. I can't remember the author, but it's like about women. We should all be millionaires, and that we shouldn't
Mm.
be ashamed of being millionaires. And my goodness, it's a brilliant book. And I think definitely I want to make money so that it gives me choices,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can choose where to invest my money, what charities to give to, so I don't have to worry about paying bills, because money in our society is a currency and it's a power,
Yeah.
and how we spend our money almost shapes society. So, yeah, I can now, after reading that book, or most of that book, quite happily say, yes, I'm quite happy to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So I think definitely financial success is in there.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it would be very hollow if I just made money by sort of pushing out programs that people do and then go, actually, yeah, I didn't get very much out of that. So for me, success is having people come back to me and go, oh my goodness, I did your program, or I did the coaching with you and it's changed my life. So
Mm.
I want people to feel the way I have felt after finding out I'm highly sensitive and having done all the things that I've done. And I can put my hand on my heart and say, my life has transformed for the better. I now know how to take care of myself. I now appreciate my sensitivity. I now know when I'm going into overwhelm and what I can do. I know how to eat well. I know how to look after myself. I know how important sleep is. I know that self-care is an absolute priority. There's so many things that I know now work for me that I didn't know before, or
Mm.
I didn't recognize the importance of them. And so my definition then of success would be having feedback from highly sensitive women, especially because that's who I work with, saying, oh my goodness, your work has changed my life. But also my definition of success would be seeing more sensitive female leaders in real positions of power where they can make changes.
Yes. Oh, I love that one. I really love that one. And I love it that you make a combination of financial success and not as a goal in itself, but as a goal to enable you to do more and to
Mm.
do more great things. And especially the latter part of, more sensitive female leaders. That would be, I think the world would really look different when we would have that in place. So yeah, in that sense, your work is, and we spoke about this when we had our session, like your work is bigger than you. It's,
Yeah.
you are the vessel, to put it like that. You're the vessel to get this message across. And especially sensitive women, and when they're listening now or watching, they need to be aware of the things, the beautiful and great things that they can do, and they need you to turn that into their power. So yeah, I can totally see that happening. I love that.
Yeah, I very much relate to that. The work is bigger than me and that I am just the conduit, the vessel to deliver this. Yes, very, for me, intuition is a huge thing, and I'm learning more and more and more how to really pay attention to my intuition. And so now when I coach, I do just trust that the right thing will come. Whereas before I used to think, oh my goodness, okay, so I need to do this technique and this thing, and I should need to do this and this and this and follow this formula. And now I can just trust, and it's almost like channeling. It's like, okay, tuning into everything that is there at our fingertips. I do really believe in the whole
Yeah.
energy and quantum energy, and that everything is made of energy, and that we have the ability, especially as highly sensitive people, to tune in more easily than others to this something bigger, this all that is. And it's about really learning to trust into that ability, but also to tune into our innate wisdom, and they're both connected. Our inner is the same as the outer, and the outer is the same as the inner, but it's that ability and the trust to really tune into it, and to embody the wisdom, and to trust and be a channel for the work that you bring to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. I fully agree with that. And especially when you look at your human design and being a highly sensitive person, you are incredibly connected to, well, the source energy, basically. And it's so easy to connect and to pass it on. The only thing is that we cannot see it. And it's, for some, it's very hard to trust, knowing that it's there and knowing that it's just ready to be passed on through us. But it's like electricity, you cannot see it, but when you plug in, it's there. And it's the same with this. So when you trust and you just go with it, you will see amazing things happening. So I really love what you do. So I know we could talk for hours. I know that we're not going to do that, not for this podcast anyway. So before we wrap up this conversation, I would love to hear your top 3, your best pieces of advice that you could give our listeners.
So I would say the very first thing, if you're highly sensitive, is to acknowledge that you're sensitive. So really understand that you are wired differently from the rest of the population, that you have a brain that takes in more information and processes it more deeply, and that you have a highly responsive nervous system that is triggered into fight, flight, or freeze more readily. So it's really just understanding your sensitivity, accepting it. And the second thing then is to appreciate your sensitivity and to really understand that it is such a huge gift. Yes, there are challenges that come from having a busy brain and a highly responsive nervous system, but once you learn to manage that and you really start to see it as a gift, that's when the magic happens. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, I think, it's to understand that the world needs your gifts, especially now. Dr. Elaine Aron, who called this trait high sensitivity, of course, even though it's been around forever, she called it high sensitivity. She sort of says the highly sensitive people need to be the royal advisors, that we need to stand behind the warrior kings and whisper in their ears and give them good and sage advice. I absolutely agree. And I think we now need to take a step further. The world is in such a state at the moment that I think we have almost a duty as highly sensitive people who see things that others miss, who can relate them to the big picture. I think we have a duty to step forward and no longer just stand behind the warrior kings. We need to put ourselves forward into positions of leadership, because we need to start to make changes from the front and from the top down. So that's the third thing, that highly sensitive people need to step into positions of leadership.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I've got goosebumps all over. I really feel this. And I think it's so true. We really need highly sensitive people to understand that their talents and gifts are incredibly needed, especially now in this crazy world where so much is going on, and start embracing it as an incredible talent and gift, instead of fighting it or getting frustrated by it, but really fully embracing it, embodying it, and using it to everyone's advantage in the world. Absolutely. So thank you so much, Nina, for this wonderful conversation. I'm going to share all your details in the show notes so people can contact you, and they should, because you do amazing work. And I love to be in touch with you and see how all this beautiful work of yours progresses. So thank you for this, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
All right. Thank you.